You're tuned in to RX Radio.
You know what I found is you can't talk shit on Instagram. You can't do it.
It's too woke.
It's too woke. And what I love about podcasting is like for better, for worse, podcasting. I mean, we are on YouTube if you guys are interested, but Spotify, Apple podcasts, like they don't have a virality component to it.
Yeah.
Right? So we can put up like a little funny shit talk thing here and there, but like the majority of the podcasts, at least at a certain point, was just talking shit. And we need to get back to that. So, all right. So I was telling you before we got started, I got pulled over yesterday. I was leaving the gym. So gym opens at 6. I'm usually out of there by like 7:30, and I don't have front plates on. So in Ontario, in Canada, you have to have a front and back license plate. Now I was living in Miami, and I actually, the reason I don't have my front plates on, this is on some gangster shit, is the city of Miami took them from me. Because you remember that?
Yeah,
I had too many parking tickets, and they're like, fuck this asshole. Because I was like, whatever. Parking tickets, Ontario plates, they're not going to get me.
Dude,
and
I've
like,
never
we'll
paid
get
a parking
you.
ticket.
I got like 7. I thought the cop was going to see him when he pulled him over yesterday. I was like, this is brutal. Just yellow fucking litter all over my center console. So I was like, oh, fuck. Like, I never put those plates back on after the city of Miami stole them and made me pay. And here's on some gang. This is Miami. So you don't pay parking tickets. You have foreign plates. They just steal your plates and replace it with an orange slip that says, you want your plates? Come to this building. So I go into this like dodgy ass building, and they only take cash. I'm like, this is the most Miami shit of all time.
I think they just call that extortion.
Miami, they call it good business. That's the Miami. It's a part of the Better Business Bureau here in Miami.
Yeah, that's the Miami tax.
Oh, yeah, that's it. So I never put the front plates back on. So I get fucking lit up by this just fucking G.I. Joe with this combat boots. I don't know, man. I don't know how old people are anymore. I'm at that age, or I'm like, I don't know. This guy's 14. He's gonna ride along. Like, why is this kid at my fucking driver's side window? Like, get the fuck. And it's like, you learn at a young age, bandana or badge, you kind of just play ball with the guy with the gun, right? Cool. I'm cool with that. So I'm like fairly reserved. So you got me on the no front plate, fair play. Those are the rules. And so he goes back to his car, and he does whatever they do in the car, right? I don't know. He probably plays Bejeweled for a bit, checks his out. Like, there's no fucking way that it takes you as long as it takes you to do whatever it is you have to do. So there's at a certain point when you get pulled over, you're like, well, I'm getting a ticket. Like, right. This next to illiterate, stupid motherfucker is having to, spell his own last name and want a ticket. That's why this is taking so long. So the realization sets in as I watch, my commute get longer and longer by the minute. I was like, for fuck's sakes, man, get on with it. I before you, except after C. Just write the fucking ticket. Let me get on with my day. So he comes back and he's got a handful. He's got your insurance papers. He's got your driver's license, all that. And he's like, all right, I'm going to write you a warning for the thing. And he hands me my license back. And I was like, oh, sick. All right. We're winning. We're winning this morning. We get a warning on the plates. And then he goes, I'm going to give you a ticket for not wearing glasses.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Dude, if anyone, please, if you're an Ontario police officer, I got pulled over. Dude, I was like the most defiant I've been to anyone with a gun in their pocket ever in my entire life. And I literally laughed. Yeah. Well, did you have a gun in your pocket? That's the question. So I'm sitting there and I'm literally laughing in this guy's face. And I'm like, I have a $50 ticket. I can get it. It's sitting on the fucking counter next to me. Hold on. Let me grab it. I'm not making shit up.
For not wearing glasses. It's the dumbest
right
shit I've heard.
Fucking hand to God. It's this one. It's this stupid fucking thing. If anyone who is a cop, I think I technically got pulled over in Mississauga. So if you're a cop and you're listening to this and you want to throw your boy a bone, because it's a $50 ticket, but you've seen me with things where I think I'm right and I think the other person is wrong. There is no amount of money. It could be a 7-cent ticket, and I will fight this to my death. I will not let people win if I think they're wrong. It is a character flaw to no end, that Airbnb in Melbourne.
Yeah. My face was melting off, and you're chewing out this Airbnb owner.
I'm 2 hits of acid deep, $800 worth of sushi next to me, and I'm just fucking writing a dissertation. Okay, got our money back. So I got this fucking stupid ticket. If anyone out there right now, whatever, I don't know. We'll get you on the podcast or whatever the fuck, like whatever you want. I'll buy you a pair of shoes. I'll actually spend more money on someone who makes this go away than the ticket cost me.
It's about the principle. It's not about the cost.
So it's like, I'm going to go to court for this, and I'm going to request that fucking G.I. Joe and his goddamn combat boots shows up, and I can look at him in front of the judge. Because I'm like, because here I'm thinking open and shut case. He comes back to my car, and he goes, "You're not wearing glasses." And I was like, "Oh, no problem. Contact lenses." Dude, you know how blind I am. Like, if I don't have these things in, I'm a liability to myself. I couldn't find my car without lenses in. Bless you. And so I'm thinking, like, bless you again. I'm going to show this guy my contact. I'll be like, tell him, like, oh, yeah, no, I have corrective lenses in. Like, that's where we're good. Because it has some provision on my license, I guess, that I need to be wearing glasses. And I was like, okay, like, I don't know. That eye test they did when I was 17. Yeah. I've been wearing contacts since then. And I was like, dude, let me tell you, like, I wouldn't be able to do anything. I wouldn't be able to see you without contacts on. So it's like, I think we're good here. And he's like, nah, there's nothing I can do. Anytime, let me tell you something for those of you listening.
Wait, you're the one doing the thing.
A little bit younger. Do you know what that means when an adult says there's nothing I can do? They're literally telling you to go fuck your hand. Like that is the professional way to be like, wow, there's nothing I can do. It's like the very recognition that you know that there is something that can be done means that you're probably in a position to do something about it. You are just choosing not to. And like the arrogance to like, that is to a grown man at some sort of transaction. What I'm sorry you feel that way, what I'm assuming would feel like to a female in an argument. No, not to be disparaging, because I've said that to people with different chromosomes and they've been really mad. Like every single time I have said, whether it's, and look, like I'm talking, whether it's my mother, whether it's my sister, whether it's a partner, without fail, anytime I come over and I know what I'm doing, I'm sitting there with the frag grenade and I'm just going, boop, pin, like,
here we go.
Let's blow this.
Here we fucking go.
If you're an adult male and you're talking, it is almost like calling like someone buddy. Like buddy is, excuse the fuck me? Like there's nothing you could do? The only thing would have been worse if he said there's nothing I can do, buddy. I would have been assaulting a police officer. We would be doing this podcast behind 3 inches of plate glass. So I get pulled and the ticket sticks and I'm driving home and it's like an hour of traffic and I'm just fucking sitting there like this piece of shit. So I don't know, a pair of Jordan Lows to anyone who wants to solve this problem for me and make this problem go away. Tickets $50. I don't really care. An extra, I'll go buy 2 pairs of shoes if you make a mockery of whoever the officer is. Reach out, and it's just such a dick move. Like it is such a dick move, dude. Give me the ticket for the license plate. Give me the ticket for the thing I did wrong, and I don't even care if the license plate ticket is more expensive. Right? Yeah. I refuse to apologize for things that I don't do wrong. I will not. And me going online and paying this bullshit fine is me apologizing. Fuck you. Oh, rattled, dude. I've been living with that. Thank you. I'm so glad we had a pod today.
Always, man. Oh, that's so ridiculous. I hate the dumb shit like that. And like the power trip you have to be on to think that, all right, I'm going to do this instead of doing the thing that I could actually do.
Which is nothing.
Right. Like, well, I mean, just writing the ticket for the thing that was wrong. It's like, oh, God, fuck this guy.
Yeah, not a fan. See if I can make out his bullshit chicken scratch handwriting. Constable Hamad, Hamad. I don't know if I'm allowed to read this off on air in a public forum. I don't particularly give a fuck. You can give me a ticket for not brushing my teeth or whatever the fuck, you stupid idiot. Anyways, that's a bit what's going on in my life. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm alive. I'm here. I'm better than you. I haven't paid a ticket in a long time. Like I've gotten multiple parking tickets. I never pay that shit. No one stole my shit. I don't know. I don't deal well with authority though. Like that's been a running theme in my life, and police officers fall very much into that realm. But it's also been a while since I've gotten beaten up by a police officer. So
The fact that you can say it's not been forever is like everyone. It's been the duration of my life since I've been beaten up by a police officer.
Yeah.
It's been a little while.
No, I've experienced having my face in the pavement and a knee between my shoulder blades multiple times.
And look, I think there's a lot in life that people don't need to experience to know is bad. The number of times that I've had to explain inequities and in a friendly forum, in chatting with females, in talking about, but like the number of times I've had to like look at people, females in most cases, and be like, do you understand if I did or said what you just did? And I say this very specifically because I've had this experience myself. How quickly a cop's knee would be in between my shoulder blades. Yes. There is a freedom that comes with, and like, look, and we don't know what the point of the podcast is. It's definitely not this, but like the number of times I've watched a friend of mine do something or say something somewhere and go, you exercise your privilege like no one I've ever seen. Now, there are downfalls, I'm sure, to being a female. I am not one, and I am grateful and respectful for all of them in my life, and I appreciate them. But they pop off on some shit sometimes, and you're like, yo. Like, if it was you, I would be like, all right, dog, you've had it before. You know what's coming. Like, I'm not trying to.
You're on your own.
Oh, my God, dude.
It's so funny. I just had this conversation with a pretty girl, and I told her that pretty girls just live life differently. Like, life happens differently when you're a pretty girl than it does when you're this or that. And
the difference is literally, to me, the difference in our cameras right now. I'm living the life of a male. Go on.
Are you saying I'm the pretty girl in this situation?
I'm saying it's bright, it's cheery. I'm literally, I don't know, I'm in a fucking rain cloud. I don't know what's going on with my cameras lately. I feel like they're always fucked up in some way.
Have you tried turning your lights on?
I don't have that many lights. It's an old building. I just open and close the windows. It's sunny, it's not. I got this big fucking thing, but it drives me nuts.
That's fair.
I don't care that much.
Yeah,
like and I, you know what? I think I have a general resistance. I enjoy our podcast, obviously. It's documented hours of probably not even close to the most heinous shit we've ever said.
No,
the most heinous shit we're comfortable. Not even within 5 minutes of when we started this. I think I'm resistant to really optimizing the podcast setup in fear of becoming a podcaster.
I see. Right. Like, this is, you want it to stand on its morals, not its production value.
I think that's been something true of what we've done in the industry up until now. Now, mind you, we pay attention to the bare minimum that we have to on production value. I think more from a personal standpoint, like as I scroll through my phone, which I attempt to do less and less, the inundation of the podcast as it integrates with Instagram, I find just nauseating, because I think podcasters are just become this echo chamber of inexperience. They just stovepipe themselves. Like, I literally, oh my God, I forget who, I probably screenshotted it. I'm surprised I didn't send it to you, but it's like, I never want to get, did I delete it? I don't ever want to get as tone deaf as some podcasters get. And they speak in the health and fitness space, but they are so far removed from the boots on the ground that, like, okay, so I'm not going to name the podcaster, but a podcaster in the health and fitness space, millions of followers on Instagram, and he posted a video of Lenny Kravitz, the singer, whatever, doing a decline sit up with a barbell and like doing some overhead press thing. Now, mind you, our boy Lenny's wearing leather pants because, of course, got to be on brand as Lenny Kravitz training in the gym. Could you fucking imagine training in leather pants?
I can't imagine owning leather pants.
Yeah, glad I as I searched through Instagram, I think I lost you, but I think you said I don't own leather pants.
I can't imagine owning leather pants.
A mesh. Okay, so it's absolutely incredible. A mesh shirt.
Yeah.
Right? And he's doing one of those jams. And a guy reposted it, a famous podcaster, and he goes, "This is how it's done." No, it's not, sir. And if you didn't spend all your time in a studio, you would know that that is diametrically opposed to how it's done. So I think, and maybe it's just a testament to me just being lazy and not because Jay Marsh is like, "Can you move your setup away from the window?" To which I say, "Nay, I can't," because this is where I work, and a podcast is only but a small part of our job. When you become a podcaster, something happens to you. Like my affinity for collaboration, not that high. I do not like when you watch people create false friendships for the sake of leveraging fall. There's no more just like it's deep. Like it's visceral. And I see it and they high five before the workout reel and then they take pictures of them. They compromise on a type of food for lunch that neither of them like. So they end up eating fucking bao buns or some shit. And it's like, you guys aren't enjoying this at all, but you're just clout demons. So yeah, I think I push back on the podcast production value as to never identify as a podcaster. There are people who do it, right? Friends at Mind Pump do a great job, but it's like, you're dealing with this. You're dealing with this fucking inconsistent lighting. You're dealing with us fucking up 500 episodes. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. I respect that.
Yeah,
that's why we're still here.
I don't know. That's why
because we can sleep at night.
Yeah, that's Now, I don't. I'm gonna go to the questions as I did what you did the other week, and I put it up. Yes. So we're gonna actually make some substance of this, and I apologize. So we're doing Q&As about every week. So let's go a bit of rapid fire here.
Let's do it.
Oh boy. Okay, so here's a good one. Someone asked me, and I'll ask you the questions. I've already answered mine. Top 3 exercises you do for the rest of your life.
Top 3 yeah, I actually saw your post, and I'm gonna mirror a bit of it. I'd say number 1, walking lunge. I think, like in my mind, when I work with people that have any sort of lower body dysfunction or lower body dysfunction or asymmetries, the biggest thing that I try to get them to do, or people that just want to train, like continue to train with no real specific athletic goal, I progress them to the point of doing a walking lunge, and then I keep them there forever. So walking lunge is high priority for me. Let's see. Oh, this is tough. I think I have to go pull up as well. I think you put that there. The amount of strength that it takes to be able to do a pull-up, the coordination, the range of motion, the eccentric load into the overhead position, I think it maintains all of the shoulder mechanics that you need to do to have high quality shoulders, or to be able to use your shoulders to a high proficiency. And then if there had to be a third one, let's see. This is tough. Maybe I would do, I'll go with the staggered stance, RDL. Anti-rotation through the core. Yeah, I think you put an RDL when you put yours up, but I would go staggered stance. I think there's more benefit through lateral stability of the hip, more benefit through the core, while you still get remnants of the same benefits of just a heavy RDL.
Lunge, B stance, RDL, pull up.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Okay. This is this one I think has a bit of potential for conversation. Dumbbell lunges. So mine was lunges, deadlifts, and pull-ups. Dumbbell lunges. Keep at your side or rest them on your shoulders. Okay. I mean, you go ahead.
Yeah. This sounds like a CrossFit thing. Like that's definitely a CrossFit thing.
Really?
Huh? It's a CrossFit thing. Like, yeah, they call it like a front rack dumbbell lunge or some shit. I see next to no benefit to that. The intention of a lunge is to work on, I guess, full spectrum gait cycle mechanics to some degree. I don't necessarily see the benefit of limiting loading by putting it up here, if that's the goal, right? That's the biggest benefit of a lunge is going to be that. So if you're going to train that, then I would put you in a more structurally stable position with the dumbbells at your sides. It's not like you're not loading your core, but shoulder flexion, external rotation isn't going to be a limiting factor in your ability to load the lower body. So I would just have them at your sides. I don't see a reason not to. If you want to be in this position or train that position, then do that. But have an intention, and the intention of a lunge is not that.
Yeah, and to add to that, it's something that I've been thinking about lately, as I see very often. It's like, okay, if you're going to dumbbell lunges and you're going to put your arms down at your sides, and you're not going to, like you say, constrain the loadability, minimize rib cage movement to whatever degree, and then just end up with like a sort of this constrained movement. If you're going to have your arms at your sides, let your arms move. The number of people that just starch their arms to the side and they just don't let their arms move. It's like, no, left foot forward, right shoulder forward, left foot forward. Like, I got to teach people how to fucking walk now. Like, it's just the second exercise.
The bodybuilder lunge too, while they're like the invisible lat syndrome.
Front relaxed pose lunge exercise with dumbbells. Dude, they're so stupid. But it's like, you know why they do it, right? Because they don't have an ability to control that rotation, or they don't have any access to that rotation. And likely one is a byproduct of the other. So not only do we go arms at your sides, I think a layer further than that, let your arms reciprocate motion, because reciprocal motion from contralateral rib cage to pelvis is really the secondary benefit to, obviously, like the primary benefit being, challenging quads and adductors and glutes and so on. So please no front rack. I mean, please do whatever the fuck you want. I don't give a shit. But if we're looking for maximizing, which I think maximizing is the goal. There's a weird conversation going on right now, and everyone's talking about optimizing, and people who are making progress with their clients are talking about maximizing. And I just don't like it. It is obviously such a subtle change or shift, a subtle shift in language that really makes all the difference in the world, right? Optimizing is usually about being right. Maximizing is about getting better. And it's like, well, that's what my job is, to get people better at whatever, whether it's out of pain, whether it's stronger, faster, whatever. Maximizing is the goal. So if we're looking to maximize the lunge, not optimize the lunge, I would suggest dumbbells down at the sides. If you prefer a dumbbell variation, let some reciprocal range of motion happen between rib cage and pelvis, which is going to express itself. The shoulder rolls forward as the contralateral hip goes into flexion. So, all right. The difference between PT and chiro is a question I get a lot. And I think there are some technical answers to this. But I think from a scope standpoint, thoughts?
I do get this question a lot as well. And from the scope standpoint, I think chiropractors might actually have a more broad scope than a PT in terms of, like, was it grade 5 mobilization or like chiropractic adjustments? I don't give a fuck.
Let's lead with that.
Yeah, but I think there's people, it's usually prospective clients ask me if I do PT, or I've seen it before where practitioners will say, oh, like I'm a chiropractor, but I do PT, or I'm a PT. And it just kind of puts boundaries around what you do. But in terms of scope, I think PT, people think more rehab oriented. Like, I'm going to do PT is, here's maybe a better way to put it. PT is a prescription from a medical doctor, right? They're going to give you a prescription for 8 weeks of PT before they go to the next level of intervention. Chiropractic is this lesser defined, kind of more nebulous, very broad scope profession, but people kind of pigeonhole it into being chiropractic adjustments. Now, myself and you are both chiropractors by trade, but I think both of us practice more of a way that's consistent with what people perceive to be PT. I do a lot of exercise-based intervention. I do a lot of muscle work. I do chiropractic adjustments. It's not the core of my business model or the core of my treatment protocols, but it's something that I will put in if I see the benefit to doing it. But I think that the big differentiator there is that people perceive PT to be exercise based. People perceive chiropractors to be adjustment based.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the perception thing is quite literally everything. It's
Yeah.
on the surface. Yeah. And there is slight variance state to state. And there has been an evolution over even in our time. Like one of the reasons I chose chiropractic college instead of PT was we came in just before the DPT program. Right. So the DPT program was quite, to my understanding, and this is 14 years ago before when I was applying for school, the physical therapist was this sort of back of the MD pocket. Like it would be no different than doing a course of anti-inflammatories, or hey, we're going to take this for 8 weeks or whatever. As PT became, itself like you said, a prescription. The DPT program, I think, has changed that slightly and broadened their scope. And frankly, with state to state differences, and I'm pretty sure, and I'll tell you one that always sticks with me. And I hope this isn't the case anymore. But in the state of Oregon, I believe, if you know where I'm going with this, the people are capable of doing, chiropractors are legally allowed to do minor surgeries. Let me tell you something. If I come at you with a knife, do not consent. Do not, in any capacity, whether it's a scalpel or a K-bar, do not consent to me trying to do minor surgery. Right. So there is, like you said, a nebulous, there it is. It's never far. I just can't wait. If I come at you with a Glock. So there is state to state variances, which makes it difficult. There's also state to state variances in demand or requirement of accreditation. And I know that's true of chiropractors, and I would imagine only the same with PTs. At the end of the day, it's like, is there a difference? Only perceptual, right? And I think, and I mentioned this before, it may have been on a podcast, but I think I don't particularly care at this juncture in my life if either are great clinicians in the realm of the musculoskeletal. I think there is such and I believe the person asking, I think it was Eric Dahlman, and who's obviously a great clinician of himself, and he's asking because he's, I think, bringing on a physical therapist. I care that every primary entrance clinician is a good diagnostician. That is all I care about. The medical systems in Canada and the US are not ideal. You just need to be able to be really good at ruling things in and ruling things out, right? Like someone comes to you and the thing is, more people would go to manual practitioners, if you will, even like acupuncturists and chiropractors, physical therapists, what have you, if we got a good reputation of yeah, I came in and my right shoulder hurt, but it was actually this visceral organ problem that I had. Or he came in and he started asking me some questions about my headaches and then sent me to the emergency room. And then it was, so I think there's so many opportunities for people who don't want to go to an emergency clinic, don't want to go to a hospital, and maybe have something that's lingering or nagging, that's painful, that they may think is musculoskeletal. I just pray to God, and I don't know the numbers, but I can be certain that there are people, and we know this from the McKenzie study, and we talk about vertebral basal aneurysms and strokes in chiropractic offices versus medical offices, and the demographics that go seek which form of treatment based off of their demographic predisposition. Older men are going to go to doctors, medical doctors, when their neck hurts. They're going to go, doc, I'm riddled with it. I don't know. The wife's nagging me. The boss is up my ass. I was golfing last weekend. And, I fucking just give me the drugs. And then the younger females, their neck hurts. They tend to more conservative care. And they could be both suffering from the same event. And they just end up based off of their worldviews in different offices. So, we know that piece to be true. It's just the medical doctor is going to be way better at screening for it. And I don't think that the physical therapist or chiropractor should be let off the hook. I really think there should be a bigger focus and responsibility and ownership taken at the clinical level of being a really good diagnostician. Now, the thing about being a good diagnostician when you talk about general pathology is if you can understand, a little bit more of the nuanced details that comes with diagnostic criteria, both specific and sensitive, for more insidious pathologies, musculoskeletal stuff becomes a fucking joke. How easy it is to start oh yeah, it's probably your labrum. I bet on MRIs now. Like I just make little bets to myself, right? Like I'm sending someone in for a thing. Like I got my shoulder ultrasounded the other day in a deal, injecting with a bunch of stuff. I'm like, let me guess. Tear here, 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 and here. I mean, it was easy because everything was torn. So I just said everything and I was right. But it's just like, if you can get good at diagnostics from a visceral pathology perspective, when you start to understand the sensitive and specific criteria of ruling in and out musculoskeletal pathologies, so easy. So that's my only thing, regardless. And it's a little bit of a sidebar from the original question. The difference, as you mentioned, I think you nailed it, is the perception. I think the similarity between both that should reign true of any clinician, be a good diagnostician. That's your job, right? Above all else.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'd also add that if you're in the realm of physical medicine, you need to know progression. You need to know exercise progression, right? And it kind of goes hand in hand, is that if you can diagnose something and you can understand mechanism of injury, then you should be able to understand the mechanism of repair, if that's the thing, but the progression that's going to get them to the level of function that they're now lacking because of that injury or because of that pathology. So I'd say that's maybe secondary to the diagnostics, because if you diagnose wrong, then you've got nothing. You don't know which path to go down. But once you do, then you have to understand proper progression in terms of assigning stimulus, in terms of loading the correct tissue. So that becomes really important in my mind as well, because that's how you get the results. It's great if you know what it is, but if you can't fix it, if you diagnose really well and you're just adjusting C2 on the right the whole time, then it's like, what the fuck are we doing here? So it's in order, definitely diagnostics, but you also have to understand exercise progression.
I think progression too is an extension of diagnostics, because it allows you to recalibrate your diagnosis in real time. Like if I say, I think it's X, Y, or Z, and I have a progression of 1, 2, and 3, if I get to 1, and then if a couple of days 1's not moving to 2 by some sort of performance metric, like subjective or objective, this feels better, or it is getting stronger, looks better, whatever, I'm starting to go back to my initial diagnosis. Like, did I get this right? Because based off of what I know of standard progressions, based off of my experience with things that look like this, I may have made a misstep. So, and I think that's something where clinicians are as guilty of suffering from a diagnosis as a patient, maybe, right? So I've seen clinicians. We recently co-managed a patient that we think was like just grossly misdiagnosed, and the misdiagnosis, obviously, and look, to a certain degree, it's on the patient, and of being like, hey, I'm going to think critically about how I feel, and if I am not improving, I'm going to start asking questions or going elsewhere. So once a diagnosis has been made, it can cement itself in the brain of the person who you're diagnosing, which is obviously problematic, but it also begins to fortify itself within the brain of the person making the diagnosis. And they don't have that ability to zoom out and be like, I've been treating, Phil for 5 weeks now. It's been 5 weeks and Phil's still coming in. My original diagnosis of, sprained rotator cuff, I think it may not be accurate. Maybe we need to go back to the drawing board. And a lot of times we don't see that point of view, that bird's eye, that hindsight. We just sort of see Phil walking in the office every day, and you dab him up and you say what's good, and it's a little better, a little worse. It's like, it's been 5 weeks, man. Like, so, that is where I think diagnostics and progressions fit together. But it's like you have to, and one sort of washes the other as far as validation, right? You have an initial hypothesis, you have a method to, enact some sort of correction. And if X doesn't equal Y, then it's like, you got to go back and recalibrate how you solve for the variable X. And so I think those two in tandem are what make a good clinician. And, and I think the humility after a misdiagnosis to be like, well, we've reached the end of my scope. This is the end of your story in my office. I think, that is something that goes alongside with or pairs with people who are able to just be like, oh, wow, the progression I used did not work. The assumption must be wrong. You either have, a differential diagnosis list, which could contain a high probability, a lower probability, and a lowest probability. And obviously that list can expand into infinity about what the underlying pathology could be. But, you got a few cracks at it, and, your time's up. If you fucking keep whiffing it, it's like, dog, time to step away from the plate, man. It's time to put someone up to bat who might have a different slant on it. And one of the things that I'll always lean on, one of the first questions I'll ask when people come in is, do they have a diagnosis? Right? Because I want to see and retest against okay, I'm not going to let this persuade me. I'm going to go through my evaluations. I'm going to come up with a diagnosis, because here's what's going to happen. Sometimes I might come up with the same diagnosis, and then I go, all right, what do they do for it? What worked? What didn't? And they're like, well, X, Y, and Z. I said, well, that's not really a progression or regression, is it? All right. I think the diagnosis is correct. The treatment intervention was, maybe a little bit misguided. Let's go through operating from this. Or I come up with a very different conclusion. I go, based off of my evaluation, I think you have this, and we're going to do these things that you're kind of bad at until you're good at them, and we're going to see how you feel. So yeah. I think there's a lot of moving parts to it, and I think the progression, regression, and the diagnostics are two that work in tandem always. You're always retesting your diagnosis, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're spot on with that. And the two things that I'll add to that is that I like to use the terminology or the thought process of a working diagnosis. Is that this is what I think, and kind of along the lines of what you said as having your list of a differential diagnosis. But once I choose, okay, it's most probable that this is the diagnosis, that's my working diagnosis, and I'm going to treat it as it is this. And if I don't see progression treating it as it is this, then I need to go back and I need to rethink what else was on that list of differential diagnosis. What might this be? And is it in my scope of practice to be able to treat this? Or do I have the tools in my toolbox to be able to get progress with this? If no, refer out. If yes, pivot, go down that route. And the last point is closing the loop on a diagnosis, right? How many people have you met that suffer from a herniated disc for their entire life? Like, oh yeah, I herniated L5 in college and I just haven't been the same since. Is that once you go down this route and you work with someone to sort out an issue and you get them back to a level of function that is acceptable, we'll say, whether that's equal to before the injury, whether that's greater than after injury or before the injury, which is always my goal, you kind of need to close the loop on that and say like, hey, look, the injury that you had has healed. That is no longer present, but there are going to be some remnants of symptoms that may stem from that. So this is something that you need to maintain in this way if you don't want those things to come back. So I think that's something that the healthcare profession on the whole is just fucking terrible at, is closing the loop on the diagnosis.
Yeah. All right. Good. I think hopefully that solved the problem and then some.
Yeah, I don't know how it started.
Next question. Key movements to build back strength after ACL surgery.
Okay. Yeah. I would look at this like as starting as soon as possible. I think is the best thing, because ACL surgery is a fucking bitch. There's like, you have a lack of function till you get the surgery. You're immobile. You're non-weight bearing for a while after. So it's going to very much start in the sense of PT, a lot of that more passive stuff. Like we actually recorded, I think, a whole podcast on this not too long ago. We were talking about like getting into knee flexion, rolling your knee in and out on the chair. So like very passively getting into knee flexion, because that's going to be the thing, right? Is when someone has an ACL repair, typically what's going to happen is they're going to lose knee flexion. So that's going to be the range of motion that is kind of on the time clock to come back. Is that if we don't address this as soon as possible and get as much progress as quickly as we can, then it might be something that goes unresolved. We may never get access to end range knee flexion if we don't intervene sooner rather than later. But there's a fine line that you have to play with that, because if you take it too far too soon, then guess what? Your new ACL is fucked. And that's worst case scenario here. So that's where this starts with me, is starting passive, starting with going down that kind of rehab progression of moving from passive, active assisted or passive assisted. Sorry, you say this better than me. I just think of it as passive and active, and then active is a scaling resistance as we go through. So the idea is that probably starting with less dynamic movements. So after I get a passive range of motion, I want to do something to start to activate the muscles and stabilize that joint. And it's probably going to start with isometrics or very small range of motion contractions, and then working to slowly start to build back the musculature that is going to support that knee through that range of motion. So knees are pretty easy. We have quads, we have hamstrings, we have calves. So working through knee flexion, knee extension, that's essentially what we have to do. That is going to be very limited by your ability to bear weight and stabilize the knee at first. So adding into that lateral stability and control through rotation at the hip is going to be the thing that allows you to not overstress the knee in any of those positions. And then just going down that rehab route in a reasonable way, but also understanding that as you go through this, it's probably going to start, especially for athletes, it's going to start in a stimulus that's below what they can handle. So being careful to ride that line in the short term, like 3 months or so, that's going to be that time where like you just very literally have to let the tissue heal, right? Like they're drilling through bone, they're either using cadavers, they're using hamstring, hopefully not, but you need to let that surgery take before you can really start to stress it in any sort of meaningful way. And then once it does, then you need to start to graduate the stimulus to what you're capable of.
Yeah, I think just to maybe layer on top of that a little bit more and kind of like an outside in view, it's, there's always, you can always do something. Like I think of this every time I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, we're doing this again? Like, fuck's sakes. One of the first things I do on my really bad days is unsubscribe from emails. It is the lowest lift that I can possibly do while I still, I don't even have my feet on the floor yet. I'm contemplating just jumping at this point. I'm like, like on days where I just don't feel like doing dick, I can unsubscribe from an email. I can roll over, grab my phone. It's 3:47 and I go, oh, fuck. I don't want to do anything. It's like, this is proof that I can do something. And it's something that, invests my time into the future because I don't get fucking Allegiant Airlines emails anymore. Allegiant was the one I unsubscribed from this morning. And it's like, okay, you can do something. Great. I think in the interest of an ACL injury, rehabilitation, surgery, it's okay. One, you might ask yourself, and it's not necessarily a useful enterprise for a lot of people, but you may ask yourself, where were there up and downstream inadequacies in movement that led to this, right? So I think about, the tibial rotation and the femur rotation as those kind of make the knee. And when we see that, that very localized pathology, when we see a tibia move away from a femur in a particular plane, more commonly like a valgus medial to lateral blow, it's like, could that have been avoided? Could we have adopted a better position? Now, you don't want to play the magic 8-ball of injuries that, only if we could do this exercise we wouldn't, like, probably not smart or judicious or even useful at the end of the day to play that type of mental math in your head. So it's, there are things though that are going to be a little bit more peripheral as you mentioned, in that early stage that the tissue is actually healing post-op, where the tissue at the ankle or the tissue at the hip is still ready to go, right? You didn't get hip, knee, and ankle surgery in some cases. I hope, and I know a few where that's been the case, and it's fucking catastrophic and an absolute dumpster fire to recover someone from that. But if you just had ACL surgery, it's like, okay, we have this 3-month window now where we can really focus, up that progression of, we're talking about active, passive assisted, passive, active, or sorry, fuck, they got me fucked. Passive, active, active assisted, active, no, fuck. Passive, active assisted, active resisted. Got it.
Nailed it.
But you can move, you can start moving, you can start doing things localized, maybe active assisted at the ankle while you're strictly passive at the knee, and right, while maybe you're active assisted at the hip. Right? You got the Don Joy brace on, you're locked in at 170 degrees, 180 degrees, like your knee is fully extended. And, you can still move your hip and keep your knee very safe. So maybe we're doing something like non-weight bearing, passive or a passive active assisted hip internal rotation or pelvic mobility drills. Like there's a lot we can do up and down the chain, because when we start looking at getting back, everyone can get to like 70% or 75%. That last 25%, I think a lot of therapists, a lot of people, they know like, all right, the knee bends, and it's like, yeah, but maybe they don't really understand the relationship of how does the position of the ankle affect the position of the tibia distally, which will then affect how it responds proximally. So we start to do all these tests with our feet on the ground, and it's like we don't have access to the range of motion, and we see it at the knee, but the problem could be, and could have maybe always been, a limitation at the foot and ankle. So when I think the question was directly around exercises, obviously it's going to depend on what phase of rehab you're in. Is this acute, subacute, or chronic? And I think one thing when you're going through ACL or rehab of any kind, there are return to play protocols, and people usually name them after themselves. And one of the things that I see most often that's a little bit detrimental to progress in the long term, like you said, it's like get to it early. I think too often we set too stringent a time constraint on progress. Like I am an advocate of like very much performance-based return to play protocols, which means if you can do this, and now mind you, the things that you're asking them to do need to be self-limited and constrained to a tissue that's able to do it. Right? You don't want to outkick your coverage, so to speak, with exercises and load progressions. So you have to be very careful of what your progressions look like. But I think a lot of times the arbitrary passing of time in a rehab progression can be deleterious to the long-term goal. As you mentioned, expediency is really going to be what rules the roost when it comes to getting someone back. And a lot of that's to do with the neurological changes that happen as the brain sort of goes plastic around that area. So one thing that I'm a huge advocate for in rehabilitation is when you come up with the landmarks, make sure that they are at least punctuated with performance markers, not just punctuated with time. We are at the 2-week mark. We are now going to progress to isometric. We are now at the 4-week mark. That means we can now graduate to the eccentric. It's like your week post-op. What if you're already at the performance mile marker? Do you just stop? Do you just keep doing it? Do you just wait until the clock strikes midnight and your knee turns into a pumpkin, or whatever Cinderella bullshit you think time has anything to do with? It's like, no, I think using obviously subjective overlay of pain with the objective overlay of performance, I think that's how you really pull yourself out of it. Now, I don't think we gave a single exercise in that entire diatribe, but I think from a principles base, that's something that we can look at. So with key movements, build back to surgery. Key movements is move correctly. And I mean that in like a more literal or more metaphorical sense of like, use principles to dictate your rehab, use performance to dictate your rehab, and maybe don't fall victim to sort of the normal paradigm, because there is going to be a reversion to the mean principle, right? We are taking the averages in these studies, in these protocols, and there are arguments to be made. ACL is a tougher one to make the argument for, but long-term outcomes of some of these surgeries, not maybe particularly ACL, but some similar to long-term, 6-month, 12-month, 18-month, a lot of the results of surgery, musculoskeletal surgery, begin to normalize over time. And so if you don't want to normalize over time, you might want to take a different approach out of the gate. The reason these things are normalizing is they are taking normalized approaches. It is very much a living example of the reversion to the mean principle. So ACLs are tough. Good luck. But you use your head. I think a lot of people get scared. Yeah. I think, we lose that thought of, human resiliency, which humans are crazy, crazy resilient. But the second we get hurt really bad and we need a knife to get us better, it's like, there's a fragility that sets in. That's dangerous. Because if you think you're fragile, you're fragile.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of ACLs are also an acute injury. I think that's something to keep in mind. But at the same time, it's an acute injury, especially if we're talking athletics, because of a chronic stressor. So understanding what that chronic stressor is that puts you in positions where you might be at risk for re-injury, and being able to account for that in the training and in the rehab process. So, if it's a lot of lateral cutting, if it's like a non-contact injury, like how did it happen? what led to this injury happen, which is different than a valgus blow, but understanding that there are going to be specific positions that this person, depending on the level of function that they would like to regain, that they will be exposed to where they will be at risk for re-injury. And thinking about that in the rehab, what can we do to make sure that this isn't something that is as exposed in those positions?
Yeah, I agree. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about one particular ACL case, and I'm thinking about one ACL case specifically that you and I both witnessed a potential rehab combine. Yeah,
Yeah,
don't do that. Okay,
yeah, don't do that.
All right,
we're gonna train valgus blows to the knee.
Oh, Jesus Christ! All right, let's do one. We're gonna do one more. Okay, what does a typical leg day look like? Warm up, main work, etc. Now, this is gonna have two very different answers.
I've been training a lot of hypertrophy lately, so I'll answer this because I'm assuming that's where this question is coming from, based off of the phrasing. But I'll give it my answer, and then you can give it yours. So, the main progression that I go after on my leg day is barbell back squat. And that's pure preference. That's not because I'm chasing hypertrophy. It's because I fucking love doing it and I want to squat a ton of weight. So that's my number one priority. That's my first order exercise. And I will typically, if I'm in like a commercial gym, what I will do to get ready for that, I'll start on a 45-degree hip extension. So I'll do that to get the glutes to, my line of thinking is kind of normalized pelvic rotation. So I'll usually have a bit of an isometric at the top, like full contraction, probably like 2 sets of 15. And then I will do the adductor machine because my hips are fucked. I don't know if it's herniated discs. I don't know if it's sprained ankles. I'm fucked. Like I have a lot of shit where lateral stability at the hips is just not what it needs to be to train like I train. So I need to do things to make sure that I can stabilize the best that I can to my ability if I'm going to try and squat as much weight as I can, which I do every single time I put a bar on my back. So it'll be like 2 sets of 15 on the adductor machine. Then I'll go walking lunges, probably 2 sets, like body weight, walking lunge with sprinter pose, about 20 steps. And then I'll get on the barbell. I'll do whatever my barbell work is for the day. Lately, I've been on 5, so I'll try and work up to a top set of 5, probably do a back off set for quality and speed. And then I will move to something that is more externally stabilized. So lately, I've been pairing back squat with a hack squat, and then I'll go quad extension, hamstring curl, seated calf raise. That's my leg day.
Easy. Yeah, I'm doing a heavy bar on my back. It's been a minute, especially since it's been heavy. What am I doing? I've been taking to in warm ups now using medicine balls, but like not like for soft tissue work and position stuff. So I'll basically lay sideways on a medicine ball. Where before I would use like a foam roller, go through the IT. Now I just stick like a 40-pound medicine ball, something with a decent diameter, like right in sort of the cavity of my innominate bone. And I just like get some frontal plane movement that way passively, try and get some big breaths in, maybe move it up to the rib cage, do that. And then I think what's been really helpful is I used to go kettlebell, just jam it into the ab. And the idea of maybe you're getting into the psoas, probably not, but there's oblique there for sure, maybe some fascia. I've been sticking with this ball. So my warm up really consists around this like 40-pound medicine ball that I just like put in different places and try and just breathe a bunch. So I'll go like innominate, just kind of like getting some passive frontal plane movement, rib cage, maybe a bit of extension, maybe a bit of flexion. And I just finish with just putting it right on my belly button and laying face down and just taking a deep breath in through my nose. I find that a little bit more responsive to loosening up and hip flexors, whatever. Just because it's not so much surface area, or so it's more surface area, therefore it's not so much pressure. Where like a kettlebell handle can just be like gnarly, like you're just like not even relaxed. There's no point. You're just more sympathetic. You're just on higher tone. So I've been doing that, and then I've had 2 leg days of late. First is going to be walking lunges, dumbbell. So just do a couple sets of body weight. 25-pound dumbbell, 50 pound, 60-pound dumbbells for as many as I can for 2 top sets. And then it's a pendulum leg press, a quad extension, and a Bulgarian. And then the second leg day is calf raises, standing calf raises, deadlifts, pendulum leg press, hamstring curl, seated. Or no, lying. That one gets a little, but yeah, it's fairly straightforward, and it's funny because off the jump, someone asked us, and the question was like 3 exercises you would do forever. The majority of my training sessions are that now. Are like the manifestation of distilling down, obviously we were talking about across the board exercise we would do forever, and like 2 that I listed without even remembering it were in there. Lunges and deadlifts. Those are in my leg days and will always be in my leg days. If you were to ask me top 20 exercises you could do forever, you're pretty much going to list every exercise in my program currently and probably into the future.
Yeah, I don't do very many exercises. One thing I do want to note on leg day, though, because you know this, and I've been dealing with this for about a year now, is I get some fucking gnarly knee pain. And a lot of it is because of asymmetries that stem from prior injuries. Like my right ankle it's I don't know what the fuck's holding it together at this point. Just pain. It's just pain that holds my right ankle together at this point. I've herniated discs. Like I just some fucked up weight distribution patterns when I do bilateral movements. So that kind of results in me lacking internal rotation on my right leg. And something I found with that pattern is like a lot of tightness in the lateral hip, a lot of tightness in the lateral hamstring. So I have a lack of tibial rotation on that right side. It's kind of cranked into external rotation. And I train Olympic weightlifting, which requires a ton of internal rotation, both at the hip and the tibia. So a large reason of why I was getting knee pain is because I just didn't have access to that range of motion. So something that I found to be 2 things I found, that the seated hamstring curl and actually the standing hamstring curl, like the kneeling one, are very helpful for me in gauging where I'm at in terms of like that lateral tibial rotation via lateral hamstrings. So that's one thing that I keep in there indefinitely. But also the seated calf raise is probably the best movement I've seen to isolate tibial rotation. Right, as you go into that dorsiflexion, I think about keeping pressure right at the base of that first metatarsal and really internally rotating the tibia as I go down. And as I come up into plantar flexion, I think about letting that weight roll across the ball of the foot towards that 5th metatarsal as I get into tibial external rotation. So that's something I'll just sit on there. I'll do single leg, like sets of 15 or 20 with no weight, literally just to get my tibia to rotate through full range. And I'll do that twice a week, and it's been the best progress I've had with my knee pain, is just doing that on a consistent basis. So that's an honorable mention there.
Love it. Yeah. I mean, calf raises in general, don't get enough play, but especially in a point where it's like, I think external rotation can get demonized, but it's just like, if you're lifting heavy enough, your body's just trying to pump the brakes. It's like, whoa, skeleton, please don't fall out of the skin suit. So it's just like bracing itself. So just strategically reintroducing that, I think, is huge, because I think a lot of people, they adopt too much when they try and fix something in a compound movement. It's like, look, your compound movements are just, don't die. And if they're not that, they're not heavy enough. Right. So
Agreed.
like cueing some of these things, it's like the way you cue IR in your squat is by doing the single leg seated calf raise, right? By doing the adductor machine. Mm-hmm. These correctives are done loaded, either in the same session before or after, not during, right? We're not going to fix it. The nervous system doesn't have an option. It's not going to take it. So you have to build that option. You have to build that tributary in your mind. So, and it also brings up the point of like, it's okay to train your ankles, right? People have ankle issues and they don't train their ankles. People have knee issues, they don't train their knees. People have elbow and shoulder issues, they never train their elbows and shoulders. They train their delts, or they train their biceps, or they train their calves or their gastrocnemius. But it's like, well, what about the underlying joint mechanics? So I think that, going into an exercise with what is the fundamental benefit of this movement, or potential fundamental benefit of this movement from a joint perspective, I think is super useful, especially when you're talking accessories, right? Like you want to talk positions with your main lifts, you want to talk muscles probably, and those 2 things should probably run in tandem. But with accessory movements, I think you should really bump up that thought process of like joint joint? What is, if I'm doing rear delt, what is the the best range for my skeleton to get the greatest amount of hyperextension of my shoulder, whatever it is. So yeah, I think you bring up, that's a really good point. I'm actually going to try that seated calf raise thing, and I'm probably going to get Marshall to clip the hand dorsiflexion thing. So yeah, guys, Q&A episode number 2 in the work, in the books. You guys like it, just go to the YouTube channel, fucking leave your questions there. If not, we throw up Q&As every week on our stories, so feel free to drop in there. PSL 1 currently up for sale. Already sold in, 12 countries, 4 continents. So very, very, very excited. Class starts May 27th. You get your manual shipped out to you ASAP. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to Jordan or myself or the Prescript or RX Radio page. Without further ado, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you on Wednesday with a new episode. Jay?
Cool. Thanks, guys.